In the heart of America's wilderness, there are certain places where if you walk just a little bit off the path, you might disappear forever. And this is exactly what happened to one family of 4 who set out on what was supposed to have been a fun camping trip. It was June 2013 when Patrick Smalley, his wife Laura, and their 2 young children disappeared into thin air while on a camping trip in the remote Beartooth Wilderness area near the town of Pocatello in Idaho. It was the type of place you'd go to get away from it all. A beautiful area filled with hiking trails and breathtaking views of mountains and valleys. But instead of enjoying the spectacular scenery, they were about to find something far more sinister. The couple had packed up their belongings and arrived at the campground in the early afternoon. They pitched their tent and settled in for what would be an unforgettable weekend. But as evening descended, so did an eerie silence around the campsite. The only sound that could be heard was the wind rustling through the trees, creating an unsettling atmosphere. As darkness fell, a chill wind swept across the Smalley's campsite, sending shivers down anyone's spine who dared venture out into the growing gloom. With no electricity or running water, the family huddled together inside their tent trying to keep warm. Then suddenly a loud crack echoed through the forest, followed by another and another. One by one, tree branches snapped under the weight of some unseen force crashing down around them. The Smalleys were terrified. Could it be a bear? Or perhaps a mountain lion? Whatever it was huge. The creature was getting closer. Panicked, they grabbed whatever they could find in the fading light and ran as fast as they could into the darkness. But the forest was unforgiving. Thorny bushes tore at their clothes, and the rough terrain made it hard to keep their balance. They stumbled blindly ahead, desperately trying to escape whatever was pursuing them. But then, just as suddenly as it started, the commotion in the forest ceased. Silence descended once again, broken only by the sound of their own ragged breathing. Finally stopped and turned to look back. The tent was gone. Their campsite was empty. And in the distance, they could hear the faint sounds of a police siren. When they turned back to continue running, they realized that they were lost and had no idea where they were. They called out for help, but their voices were swallowed up by the dense trees surrounding them. As night fell, fear turned to despair. They were trapped, lost, and alone in the vast wilderness, without any way to contact the outside world. And by morning, they had vanished without a trace. The next day, their tent was found abandoned and torn, suggesting a struggle of some kind. And although the search for the missing family began immediately, after 8 long years, there was still no sign of them. Now, after 8 years, a drone has captured something shocking. So what exactly happened to the Smalleys? Let's start at the beginning. On June 29, 2013, the Smalleys left their home in Salem, Oregon, excited for a long weekend camping trip in southeast Idaho's Caribou-Targhee National Forest. They packed up the car and hit the road towards their destination at Beartooth Wilderness area. Upon arrival, they set up camp and spent the first evening playing with their 2 kids and exploring the surrounding area. But it was during the second night that things took a terrifying turn. As mentioned earlier, they were awoken by what sounded like screams in the forest. They were scared stiff. Patrick and Laura held on to each other tightly while whispering comforting words to their children. They knew that bears lived in these woods, and maybe it was just a bear. In the morning after, of course, not sleeping at all, they unzipped the tent to the creepiest scene. The tent had been ripped apart, and their food supplies were scattered around the tent. It was obvious that something big and strong had come into the tent during the night, but they didn't know what. When they emerged from the tent, they noticed that the zipper was broken and their food bags were torn open. The tent itself had several large gashes in it, as if something heavy had tried to claw its way inside. Fearful, the family quickly gathered their belongings and fled into the forest, hoping whatever had disturbed them would leave them alone if they could just get out of the area. As the sun rose higher in the sky, their fear turned to panic when they realized that they had no idea where they were going. The dense trees and thick underbrush made it impossible to navigate, and they couldn't remember which direction they had come from. They were completely lost. Meanwhile, back at the campsite, a search party was forming. When the Smalleys failed to return to their campsite by the time they were expected, their friends and neighbors grew worried and decided to investigate. What they found was a scene of chaos. The tent was ripped and destroyed, and personal belongings lay scattered around the campsite, including children's toys. There was no sign of a struggle, though, and no indication of where the Smalleys could have gone. A report was filed with the local authorities, and a massive search operation was launched, involving hundreds of volunteers, helicopters, and even specially trained cadaver dogs. But despite their best efforts, there was no sign of the missing campers. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still there was no trace of the family. The case eventually went cold, leaving behind a cloud of unanswered questions and theories. Some believed that the family had been the victim of foul play, kidnapped and taken away from their campsite in the middle of the night. Others blamed wild animals, such as a pack of wolves or a mountain lion, saying that they had dragged the bodies deep into the woods. Still, others claimed that the Smalleys had stumbled upon something they were unsupposed to see and were killed for what they had witnessed. Some even believed that the family had been taken by aliens. But now, 8 years later, a break in the case seems to have come, when a man was flying a drone over a remote area of the Unsolved wilderness, and he captured something strange on camera. It was a clearing that was too small to be seen from the ground, and yet there was clear evidence of human activity. He landed his aircraft nearby and cautiously approached the edge of the clearing, his eyes scanning the ground for clues. Suddenly, he spotted something that made him gasp. Half buried in the dirt was a shoe, a child's shoe, looking eerily similar to the very same ones little Caden had worn on the fateful camping trip all those years ago. This discovery sent shockwaves through the close-knit community that had never given up hope of finding the missing family. Could this be the breakthrough they had been waiting for all these years? It seemed like fate had intervened, providing them with a new lead that could potentially solve the mystery. The news of the discovery spread like wildfire, stirring up a mix of excitement and apprehension among the residents. Many had lost faith in ever finding the missing family, but this new development gave them reason to hope once again. Authorities immediately rushed to the new location, hoping that it could shed some light on the case that had baffled them for so long. As they combed through the area, they began to uncover more pieces of evidence that linked it directly to the missing family. Personal belongings such as clothing and jewelry were found, suggesting that the Smalleys had indeed been here. But perhaps even more disturbing was the discovery of what appeared to be a makeshift grave.
Although no bodies were found,
The presence of such a grave in the area raised many questions. Was it possible that the family had been buried in this remote location? Or could there be something more sinister at play? And so the investigation took a dark turn as authorities grappled with the possibility that the family had been the victims of foul play. The discovery of the potential burial site shook the community to its core. It meant that the nightmare scenario they had feared all along might actually be true. The thought that the Smalleys could have been taken and brutally murdered sent chills down everyone's spine. As the investigation continued, the community waited anxiously for answers. The discovery of the new location had brought a sense of urgency to the case, but it also raised even darker questions. What had really happened to the Smalleys in those woods? Had they been attacked and then buried in a shallow grave? Was responsible for their disappearance? Unfortunately, after all these years, some of these questions may never be fully answered. And so, the mystery surrounding the disappearance of the Smalleys continues to linger over the community. Despite the progress made in uncovering the truth, there is still a sense of unease and uncertainty. The discovery of the new location and the evidence found there have brought them closer to solving the case, but it has also opened up a Pandora's box of disturbing possibilities. As they continue to piece together the puzzle of what happened to the Smalleys, they are faced with the haunting realization that the truth may be even more terrifying than they had imagined.